Jordan said the committee has received testimony indicating the Bank of America provided FBI voluntary and without any legal wait, what? They provided it to him. Jordan said the committee has received testimony indicating that Bank of America provided the FBI voluntarily and without any legal process a list of individuals who made transactions in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area using Bank of America credit card or debit card between January 5th and January 7th. Whoa. So we're going to talk about today two things: the Iowa caucus that just passed, and then we're going to also talk about there is a request or a letter that was released or some document that was released that was talking about how the FBI and parts of the federal government requested the transaction data for people that use the words MAGA and Trump and all sorts of things. People that shop at Bass Pro Shops, people that go to basically sounds like the average American. So I don't know the nuances of the reports, but we're gonna check it out today. So House Judiciary Committee Republicans. So judiciary.house.gov seems legit. So alarming surveillance. Feds asks bank to search private transactions for terms like MAGA and Trump. Released on January 17th, 2024 by Brooke Signet. Fox News exclusive. Federal investigators ask bank to search and filter customer transaction by using terms like MAGA and Trump as a part of an investigation into January 6th. Warning that purchases of religious texts could indicate extremism. The House Judiciary Committee revealed on Wednesday. Religious texts. You got to know that they're talking about the Bible. They can't because they couldn't do this to Muslims and get away with it in the way that today's society is set up. You couldn't do it to Jews. You couldn't do it to any other minority religious group. But if you're Christian, then you better watch out. Fox News Digital has learned the committee also obtained documents that indicate officials suggested that banks query transactions with keywords like Dick's Sporting Goods, Cabela's, Bass Pro Shops, and more. If you use, I am a majority credit card user, but this might make me use cash. I'm not doing anything illegal, but the fact that and we don't know if the banks actually complied with the request or not, but I'm not saying that they're above it. House Judiciary Committee Chair Jim Jordan said the documents obtained by the committee indicate that after January 6, 2021, the Treasury Department's Office of Stakeholder Integration and Engagement in the Strategic Operations of the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN, distributed materials to financial institutions that outlined topologies of various persons of interest and provided the banks with suggested search terms and merchant category codes for identifying transactions on behalf of the federal government. I'm just speculating here, but the way that this is written seems that they were already in cahoots with the bank, and then the bank has a massive customer base, so they wanted more strict guidelines on who they wanted them to search. What it seems like to me. What do you think? The materials include a document recommending the use of generic terms like Trump and MAGA to search Zelle payment messages, as well as a prior FinCEN analysis of lone actor homegrown violent extremism indicators. So these words are being used, but there's no real definition. What do they mean by extremism? Because my definition of extremism might be different than your definition of extremism. In the book, The Coddling of the American Mind, the author talks about safetyism and how people think that emotional, like getting their feelings hurt, is a form of violence and so forth. So those type of people may believe that something that's extreme, where I find it incredibly not extreme, for lack of a better term, right? According to this analysis, FinCEN warned financial institutions of extremism indicators that include transportation charges such as bus tickets, rental cars, or plane tickets for travel areas with no apparent purpose, or the purchase of books including religious texts and subscriptions to other media containing extremist views. Jordan detailed in the letter to the former director of FinCEN, Noah Bischoff, a career employee. There's a lot in here. So how do you know? What do you mean there's no apparent purpose? Just everybody that travels have a purpose or have a reason for going. Like plane tickets, rental cars, those are everyday Americans that use those things. So it seems like if something happens, then they can just collect your data and then put it in some seems like some kind of database. One of the guys that I know, he was talking about, it seems like they're collecting a database, and based on this, that seems pretty online. Or the purchase of books, including religious texts. What religious texts are they talking about? Religious texts like the Bible, the Quran, the Torah. You got to be more specific, but because America is majority Christian, it's safe to assume that they're talking about people that buy the Bible. And I don't, and I have another friend that I spoke to. I was like, "Do people buy Bibles?" And it's like, "No, they're typically free. You can, there's an app for a free Bible, so I don't know who exactly is buying Bibles, but it's a part of their query terms." In other words, FinCEN use large financial institutions to comb through the private transactions of their customers for suspicious charges on the basis of protected political and religious expression. So they're basically saying that your transactions are not private, and then they could look through them if they want. The bigger issues here is if the bank is cooperating. We know social media platforms have been known to cooperate with federal investigators, whether it be justified or not. And they can turn on me just like they can turn on anybody else. They just decide whatever you're doing is extreme, and then now you're an extremist. And they just throw these terms around loosely, basically to ruin your life, career, whatever. They'll destroy your family with no thought of their own just because they want to make you the bad guy. For recreationally shooting or participating in fight sports, things like that, I'd imagine. The Treasury Department declined to comment. Of course they did, because the source familiar told Fox News Digital that the effort by FinCEN to work with law enforcement to assist with their post-January 6 efforts began under the previous administration. So they're saying that Trump authorized this? Maybe? If that's the case, that's even weirder, because they started way before January 6th even happened. Jordan said the committee obtained documents showing that FinCEN distributed slides prepared by Ken Bank to other banks to explain how they could use merchant categories MCC to detect customers whose transaction may reflect potential active shooters and who may include dangerous international terrorists, domestic terrorists, and homegrown violence experience. So, sure, you may be able to find a common cause, but based on the last few years, the amount of active shooters vary widely across the political spectrum. There was a shooting in a nightclub, I think in Orlando. I think the guy may have been trans or something. I don't know. I haven't looked into that one yet. Jordan said the slide instructs financial institutions to query for transactions using certain MCC codes like 3484 small arms and 5091 sporting and recreational goods and supplies, and keywords such as Cabela's and Dick's Sporting Goods and Bass Pro Shops, among others. Ha! I shop at Academy Sports. Seems like I'm safe. No, I'm kidding. The Academy is also probably on there. Basically, anywhere that sells firearms or ammo or hunting gear is what it seems like. I'm sure that list is extensive. KeyBank declined to comment. Dick's Sporting Goods, Bass Pro Shops, and Cabela's did not respond to Fox News Digital requests for comment. I'd imagine those companies are going to sue whoever put this inquiry in, or they're going to sue. They can sue the bank, they can sue the federal government, because if I know that if I use a credit card at your company, then now either I have to shop with cash, which is pretty inconvenient most of the time, or I have to stop shopping at your stores. So the banks can directly affect these businesses by giving their customer transaction away. So I'd imagine that there's a lawsuit coming down the pike for whoever is participating in this from these businesses. A source familiar with the documents told Fox News Digital that while January 6, 2021 was the impetus for the queries and searches, so it didn't start before in Trump's White House. It started because of January 6th. That's inverse to what they said earlier in this article. None of the documents the committee has obtained reveal any specific timeframes or limitations for banks searching customer transactions with the terms. The source said the federal government used the information for investigations beyond January 6th. So they're using it for any type of investigation that they possibly can. They're going to collect the data, and they're not just going to get rid of it once they get it right. They're going to keep it in the database and then cross check the data that they already have with new information based on whatever current situation that they're trying to investigate. Despite these transactions having no apparent criminal nexus, in fact, relate to Americans exercising their Second Amendment rights. A Second Amendment advocate, FinCEN seems to have adopted a characterization of these Americans as potential threat actors, Jordan wrote. This kind of perversive financial surveillance carried out in coordination with and at the request of federal law enforcement into Americans' private transactions is alarming and it raises serious doubts about FinCEN's respect for fundamental liberties. Duh. Jordan asked that Bischoff contact the committee to schedule the transcribed interview by January 31st. Meanwhile, in a letter to FBI Director Christopher Wray on Wednesday and obtained by Fox News Digital, Jordan requests a transcribed interview with a senior private sector partner for outreach in the strategic partner engagement section of the FBI, Peter Sullivan. Jordan said the committee has received testimony indicating the Bank of America provided FBI voluntary and without any legal wait, what? They provided it to him. Jordan said the committee has received testimony indicating that Bank of America provided the FBI voluntarily and without any legal process a list of individuals who made transactions in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area using Bank of America credit card or debit card between January 5th and January 7th. Whoa. So Bank of America, who was the primary people responsible for the 2008 crash, are not surprisingly involved in another scam, right? These banks are ridiculous. And I myself have Bank of America, but this is crazy. You can't just dig through people's personal information and provide it to the government like that. What happened to separation of powers? You can't the federal government can't coerce private institutions to, unless Bank of America is funded by the government, which they probably are because they were bailed out just like all these other banks in 2008. So they probably feel like they owe the federal government. And or not even that they owe, that there might be a foot on their neck saying that, hey, you got to provide this or risk potential funding. Fox News Digital first reported on a portion of the committee's investigations last year. Bank of America in November said that the bank followed all applicable laws. Yeah, of course you did. In its interactions with the government, the bank noted that the Treasury Department on January 15, 2021 shared information regarding potential criminal activity that could disrupt the upcoming inauguration. Yeah, you could follow the law, but you have the CEOs that work at these companies that make these decisions have a fiduciary responsibility to their stakeholders, and their stakeholders are basically the people that put their money in their banks, right? So you may be following the laws as you interpret them, but you're doing a disservice to the people that use your institution. We have cooperated with the committee as they evaluate whether the laws are complied with should be changed, Bank of America said. So they're trying to change the laws after the fact. But in the Wednesday letter, Jordan states that when that list was later brought to the attention of the FBI, the former section chief of domestic terrorism operations section, Steve Jansen, acted to pull that Bank of America information from FBI system because the leads lacked allegations of federal criminal conduct. Yeah, they're not going to pull it. They say they're going to pull it, but they're going to pull it and move it to another database. It's too easy to do that. And they're just going to, like I said, they're going to hold on to it and then cross-check it whenever something bad happens again in the future, or if they, not even something bad, if they suspect somebody of doing something illegal, they can use these to track you down and then paint a picture of you that may not be the most accurate. Jordan said the committee has obtained documents that show FBI personnel, including Sullivan, made contact with and provided Bank of America with specific search queries indicating that it was interested in all financial relationships of Bank of America customers' transaction in Washington, D.C., and customers who had made any historical purchase of a firearm, who had purchased a hotel, Airbnb, airline travel within a given date range. I assume January 5th to January 7th. So even if you were visit, because that's the curtail of the holiday season. So if you go home and visit family, which I do, I have family in Virginia, in Northern Virginia and the middle of Virginia. So I visit probably once a year to go see my family. I wasn't there, but had I gone home that year, I could have been a part of this investigation too. And just like you, anybody that has family in the Northern Virginia area, you could be a part of this investigation. And if you don't keep your nose clean, or if you end up in some precarious situation in the future, this could be used against you in the future. Jordan also said the committees obtained documents indicating that the FBI personnel in the Office of Private Sector prepared an official report that broadly characterized certain political beliefs as indicative of domestic violent extremism. Yeah, there's those words again. Jordan asked that the FBI make Sullivan available for a transcribed interview and requested to be scheduled by January 31st, saying his testimony will help inform the committee and select subcommittee about the FBI's mass accumulation and use of America's private information without legal process. The FBI's protocol, if any, to safeguard America's privacy and constitutional rights in the receipt and use of such information, and the FBI's general engagement with the private sector on law enforcement matters. The FBI declined to comment. I'm shocked. The request for interviews come as a separate House committee investigates what really happened. Oh, so basically, it's a long story short. They're they're gathering all your information, and they're saying that once the investigation is concluded, or not even when the investigation is concluded, they said they're going to pull, and the I'd assume they're trying to say is they're going to pull the information and get rid of it, but we know that they don't do that. They'll just move it to another repository or another database, and then you'll hang out in that. Your information will hang out in that database until it becomes needed in another investigation, to basically pinpoint you to a particular area. That's crazy. So this is the House Judiciary, the judiciaryhouse.gov. It seems like a federal website that we just read from. Let's see if there's any left-leaning places that reported on this as well. The Washington Times. Is the Washington Times? Good. Let's see, what is the affiliation of the Washington Times politically? Oh, so it's left-leaning. The Washington Post is a left-leaning organization, and they occasionally endorse Republican candidates. I think recently, I can't remember specifically, but I think they're a left-leaning organization. So let's see what they say about it. Okay. Here we go. Obvious holes in FBI target Trump supporter story. This is an older story. Philip Bump. So let's hear what the other side had to say about it. It's easy to both over and underestimate the scale of former President Donald Trump's support nationwide. It is not the case that half of the country supports him, despite the shorthanded that he and others like to use, but it is a case that tens of millions of Americans do not and take the face value his assertions about politics and culture. That means there is a huge audience for evidence that would seem to support his claims. The film 2000 Mules offered a non-credible case that rampant fraud across Trump in the 2020 election, but since there was demand for evidence to that effect, it became a right-wing blockbuster. The economics of sale: if you can get 5% of an audience of 50 million to give you $5, you just made more than 12 million. I'm not arguing that the cover story of Newsweek this week was intentionally written to make a similar appeal to Trump supporting right. The once respected magazine increased support for the political right as well is well documented. So it's possible, but it's not surprising that the assertion outlined in this headline, Donald Trump followers targeted by the FBI as the 2024 election nears, has been embraced as revelation by the Trump base. So it's funny that this was written before that previous article that we just read. He's claiming that it's overstated, but what we just read clearly cite the opposite, right? That's a fundamental problem with the report written by William Arkin. The case is not made. Arkin presents some numbers and quotes, but none added up to the FBI singling out Trump supporters, as the headline implies. All right, so that's all we needed to know. He's trying to discredit before the previous article came out that the FBI is not targeting Trump supporters, which directly contradicts what the other article said. The other article says that they requested information that from Bank of America and other banks, specifically targeting terms like Trump and MAGA. It's wow. So it's the regular infighting. The right claims something, then the left goes out of their way to debase it and make it so it's not true. But you make your own opinions, or you come to your own conclusions. The other thing I want to talk about was the Iowa caucus this week. I did some research before, and it seems like the Iowa caucus is not anything significant other than it's the first election made about, or it's the first caucus, or okay, I'm doing a bad job explaining this. Let's just look it up. Former President Trump swept all but one of Iowa's 99 counties to amass a 30% victory over Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis and former United States National Ambassador Nikki Haley. Trump lost Johnson County, Haley, but just by one vote. So he won 98 out of the 99 counties. So what is the significance of the caucuses? Primaries, presidential primaries, and caucuses. Primaries and caucuses are two ways that people help states. Political parties choose presidential nominees, learn how they work, and the difference between the process. Most states hold primaries 6 to 9 months before the presidential election. Presidential primary voters choose their preferred candidate anonymously and cast in secret ballots. The state where the primary is held takes the result of the vote into account and award delegates to the winners. So I'm assuming the people with the most delegates will win the primaries or the caucuses. Several states hold caucuses in the months leading up to the presidential election. Caucuses are meetings run by political parties that are held in the county, district, and precinct level. Some caucuses choose candidates by secret ballot. Others require participants to divide themselves into groups according to the candidates they support. Undecided participants form their own group. Each candidate's group gives speeches and tries to get others to join their group. At the end, the number of delegates given to each candidate is based on the number of caucus votes they receive. Types of primaries and caucuses. Depending on states and political party rules, primaries and caucuses can be open, closed, or some hybrid of the two. During an open primary caucus, voters do not have the registered with a political party to take part in this primary caucus. During the closed primary caucus, only voters registered with that party can take part and vote. Semi-open caucuses, primaries, and are variations of the two types. So, right. Awarding delegates from the primaries and caucus. Second, states and political parties use different methods for deciding how many delegates they will award to each candidate. For information about our state's presidential primaries or caucuses, contact your blah, blah, blah. Okay. Okay, so the winner of, if you win the caucus, you get the delegates, and I'm assuming the delegates represent. I haven't participated in many political, not even just discussions, or even elections prior to this year or the year before, or the years before. It seems like the more delegates you win, the more likely you are to win the nominee, and the more caucuses you win from a bunch of different states. The caucuses and primaries seems like they have like a sibling relationship. The more of those you win, obviously, the more likely you are to be nominated by your party. But it's based on the amount of people in each state that participate in the caucus that will lead you to end up being the nominee for your political party. So, in summary, caucuses have no individual, their power is not so overwhelming by themselves that you could just win one caucus and be nominated as the nominee for the election, the overall election. But that's all I had to cover for today. To wrap it up, in summary, the government's always spying on you. Watch what you post online. Watch what you're doing. If you're partaking in illegal activities, well, that's just on you. And it's going to be an interesting election cycle. One of the podcasts I watched, Patrick Bet-David, talk about this is going to be the year of chaos, and it seems like it might already heading down that way already. So that's all I got for today. See you on the next video.